Ladies and gentlemen, today we're entering a chilling alternate timeline, a world where one of the most powerful and feared figures of the 20th century did not die in 1953. What if Joseph Stalin, the iron architect of Soviet terror and triumph, had lived another 10 years? 10 years longer to rule, to purge, to reshape the world in his image, while the Cold War escalated all around him. This is not a fantasy. This is a projection of history that could have been. And it begins in 1953, not with a funeral, but with a tightening fist. In our timeline, Stalin dies in 1953, and Khrushchev's thaw begins. But in this version, he survives, recovering from his stroke, more paranoid than ever, and determined to never show weakness again. The post-war Soviet economy remains a rigid, top-down machine. Stalin continues his obsession with rapid industrialization, regardless of human cost. 5-year plans grow more aggressive. Quotas rise. Agricultural collectivization, which had already devastated rural populations, is intensified. Famine returns, not as a natural disaster, but as state policy. Stalin envisions a Soviet Union, not just as a rival to the West, but as its replacement. Every resource is redirected toward military superiority. The arms race goes nuclear. Stalin pushes for even faster development of hydrogen bombs, long-range missiles, and satellite surveillance, not to explore space, but to control it. His distrust of computers and cybernetics slows Soviet progress in computing, but his hunger for dominance drives innovation in other areas: aerospace, missile guidance, and biological research. The Soviet military becomes even more massive, its doctrine increasingly focused on preemptive strike capabilities. But while rockets rise, the people sink. Consumer goods remain scarce, housing shortages worsen, and dissent becomes even more dangerous. Domestically, Stalin's extended reign is a nightmare extended. The thaw never comes. There is no de-Stalinization. The Gulag system expands, with new camps opening in Siberia, Central Asia, and even near the Arctic. Anyone suspected of deviation, intellectuals, artists, scientists, ethnic minorities, is silenced. The Leningrad Affair of 1950 in our world, a limited purge, becomes a model for mass repression. Regional leaders are executed. Jewish doctors, academics, and writers disappear, as Stalin resurrects the doctor's plot and expands it into a full campaign against Zionist conspirators. Art becomes a weapon. Socialist realism is the only permitted form. Music must glorify labor. Film must demonize the West. Independent creativity is labeled sabotage. Children grow up learning not history, but mythology. The infallibility of Stalin, the wickedness of capitalism, the destiny of the Soviet people to rule the earth. Fear becomes a currency. Neighbors denounce each other. Privacy ceases to exist. On the world stage, Stalin's survival reshapes the Cold War completely. There is no peaceful coexistence, no chance of détente. Stalin views the West, especially the US, as existential enemies. Korea remains a frozen battlefield, and Stalin actively seeks new proxy wars. In Vietnam, instead of a cautious Khrushchev, the North receives direct encouragement from Stalin to escalate armed revolution. In Africa, Stalin funds militant Marxist movements from Congo to Algeria. In Latin America, he accelerates support for revolutionaries long before Fidel Castro gains power, possibly even shaping Cuba into a Soviet satellite by the mid-1950s. Europe becomes more dangerous. West Berlin, surrounded and vulnerable, becomes a potential target for blockade, or worse. Stalin pressures East Germany, Hungary, and Poland into even harsher control, eliminating moderate voices and crushing all protest with force. The Cuban Missile Crisis, which in real history occurred in 1962 under Khrushchev, would likely erupt earlier and bloodier under Stalin. And he might not back down. The world stands inches from nuclear war, not just once, but constantly. Because in Stalin's eyes, peace is not the goal, victory is. Inside the USSR, infrastructure is built not for convenience, but for control. Gigantic railways link military bases, gulags, and arms factories. Entire cities are relocated for strategic purposes. Mega projects like hydroelectric dams, nuclear power plants, and Arctic industrial zones are ordered by decree, with little concern for cost or safety. Stalin's obsession with secrecy leads to underground cities, hidden labs, and closed zones where even Soviet citizens cannot enter without clearance. Meanwhile, education is transformed into a tool for total ideological saturation. History is rewritten. Biology is distorted to fit Marxist-Leninist doctrine. Foreign languages are discouraged. The goal is not to create thinkers, but to breed functionaries. Bright minds are diverted into weapons programs. Philosophy, psychology, and sociology are gutted. Schools teach children to report on their families. Universities become recruitment centers for the security state. By 1963, an entire generation is raised under the shadow of a leader who never softened, never retreated, and never forgave. So what if Stalin had lived 10 more years? The Cold War would have burned hotter, the Iron Curtain would have thickened, and the human toll inside the Soviet Union would have grown unimaginably larger. There would be no thaw, no chance for reform, no easing of fear. This isn't science fiction. It's a glimpse into a path the world narrowly avoided, a lesson in how fragile progress can be, and how critical it is to confront power before it calcifies into tyranny. Because sometimes 10 years can change everything.